Hey there, everybody. Today I have my first dessert recipe, and that is pineapple upside down cake. And I'm really proud of this recipe because I got a recipe from online, made it, didn't like it that much, figured I could make it a lot better. So I tweaked a few things and made it into a recipe I am proud to present to you guys. And instead of talking your ear off about the recipe, I figured I'd keep the intro short and sweet, just like the cake. So why don't we just get into cooking?
Okay, the very first thing you're going to want to do is preheat your oven to 350. Nobody likes doing all their prep and having to preheat their oven afterwards, so make sure you do it at the start. Just a friendly reminder, I know you probably already know this. And next we're going to go ahead and make our topping, which consists of brown sugar and butter, so go ahead and melt half a cup of butter however you like. You can melt it in a pot or pan or in a baking dish in the oven while it's preheating, or you can do what I did and just go ahead and throw it in the microwave. Anyway, when you're done with that, go ahead and measure out 2/3 of a cup of packed brown sugar and put it into your baking pan along with the butter. This is actually the first change I made to the recipe I found online by a company probably everybody knows, and it rhymes with Ketty Brocker. On that recipe, they tell you to use 1/4 of a cup of butter instead of a half a cup, but I used a half a cup because I don't know how to read and accidentally put in a half a cup instead of 1/4. And actually, it turned out really well. It made getting the cake out of the pan a whole heck of a lot easier than normally would. And the only other noticeable changes I saw other than that was the topping was a little bit more smooth instead of crumbly like it normally would be. And on top of that, the edges of the cake got a little bit crispy, which was pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. So if you want that normal kind of grainy sugary topping that you would normally get on a pineapple upside down cake, scale down the butter. But if you want to try it with a smoother topping and some crispier edges, go ahead and put in half a cup. Either way though, when you're done mixing together the butter and the sugar in your pan, go ahead and start laying in your pineapple slices. And for this, I'm going to recommend you do 2 things before you put them into your pan. The first thing I'm recommending is drying off your pineapple before you put it in. This will help prevent soggy cake, which nobody wants. And the second thing I'm going to recommend is making small cuts into the inside of that pineapple slice about 1/3 of the way up. And this may not seem very important to you, but I'm telling you, I've made a lot of pineapple upside down cakes in my life. And by doing this, it makes cutting the pineapple after your cake is done and out of the oven a lot easier with either a fork or a spoon, which ensures you're not going to pull off an entire pineapple slice on your first bite, which, let's be honest, is not very fun. So do these 2 things and fit as many whole pineapple slices as you can in there, and then cut up your pineapple into reasonably sized pieces to fill in the holes where you couldn't fit a whole slice. Then lay out your maraschino cherries if you so desire. They are optional, you don't have to put them in. And when you're done with that, we can get moving on to our batter. We're going to start by getting our dries together. The first of the dries is going to be 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to recommend that you sift your flour, but if you don't have a sifter, it is fine. This just makes sure that the texture of the batter is nice and uniform. Then we're going to go ahead and add 3/4 of a cup of sugar, which is also one of the changes I made. The original recipe recommended an entire cup of sugar, but I found that the cake was just a little bit too sweet for my liking. And lastly, we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder as well as 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then go ahead and mix those together and we can get on to our wet ingredients. My recommendation for the wet ingredients is just to beat 1 egg inside of 3/4 of a cup of milk. You'll see here that I added my 1/3 of a cup of vegetable shortening to it as well, but it didn't really work out how I intended. It just kind of clumped up. But vegetable shortening doesn't really mix well with the dry ingredients either, so I just recommend mixing it together when you add your wets to the dries. But once you got your wets, dries, and vegetable shortening together, you're going to want to whisk it until it is completely smooth. Generally, the clumps you're going to see in the batter are going to be clumps of flour and clumps of vegetable shortening, and we don't really want either. So go ahead and mix it all up with a whisk, a stand mixer, or a handheld mixer, however you desire. and don't stop mixing until your batter is nice and smooth. After that, just go ahead and dump your batter right on top of your topping. And right here you will notice why I am going to make another recommendation for you, which is to get small maraschino cherries if you're going to be adding them. These big cherries kind of stuck out over the top of the batter and it ended up making a hole in the cake even after it baked. So go ahead and get the small ones if you're going to be using it for this recipe. It wasn't really a huge deal considering we're flipping the entire cake over after it comes out of the oven, but it's just something to keep in mind. Anyway, when your batter is in the pan, go ahead and throw it into your preheated oven. And we're going to be cooking this cake for at least 45 minutes. But the real test of whether a cake is done or not is to stick a toothpick into the very middle of the cake and see if any batter comes out along with the toothpick. If your toothpick comes out completely dry, then your cake is done. Just for reference, my cake took 55 minutes to finish up. But when your cake comes out of the oven, go ahead and throw it onto a cooling rack so you can let it rest for at least 30 minutes before you flip it over. If you flip it over early, you run the risk of your topping sliding off the top of your cake and onto the sides, which makes it not so much topping anymore. So be patient, and when you're done, you can flip it over and you get this beautiful looking pineapple upside down cake. And it's not just pretty on the outside, it is also pretty on the inside. It tasted great. I hope you make it, and I hope yours tastes great too. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will have the complete recipe as well as the cost breakdown for this cake. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing to the channel. It makes me happy and it's free to use, so it's a win-win. So for now, goodbye, and I hope to see you in the next one.